Welcome to True Talk on WMNF 88.5, the True Talk Radio Hour and True Talk Podcast. We're broadcasting live right now from Tampa, Florida, from our beautiful studios. It's November 14th, Thursday, November 14th. Donald Trump just announced his latest nominations for Attorney General. Fellow Floridian Matt Gaetz from the Panhandle. And it's sending shockwaves throughout the nation, especially in Washington, D.C. We're going to talk about, well, in addition to all the other appointments that Trump has been announcing on a daily basis, including Tulsi Gabbard, was a former Democrat, turned now, I guess she's independent or Republican, as well as a number of other appointments that are not very orthodox or traditional, which is freaking out Washington, D.C. What will those appointments mean for the Middle East and foreign policy? How will this term be different than the previous? And what will it mean for the ongoing genocide in Gaza? We're going to continue this conversation. My co-host and I, Samar Jarrah, will be discussing that and maybe taking also your phone calls to get your to weigh in on what you think is going to happen. So stay tuned. This is True Talk on WMNF 88.5. We'll be right back.
دق 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 كلها تشوف الدنيا كحلة سحرة قحلة سحرة قحلة دق 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 باش تشوف الدنيا أحلى والحومة مفحلة والحومة مفحلة دق 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 تستنى في عسل النحلة صبورة كحلة صبورة كحلة هزنا الطيار ورمنافع قبل رحلة ضايع بين الحيوت وما لقيتش بلاصة حومة بين بلاد الهوت يما خلوني بشي خامس موت وحكموا ناس الراقة والكراسي باللهبوت نحب نشد الروت ونقلب المناظر نقلب وجهي من هنا يما ما نحب نعيش الأحياء بالموت نوفا كيما ولد الجارة بشي خاطب له
يا ليلي ويا ليلى وش باش نشكيلك يما وقالوا لي ليلى صغير وفي قلبي غمة ودير الفوق يحبوا يقصوا لجناحي قولي ذكراني مخنوق.
Welcome back to True Talk. This is Ahmed Bedier. My co-host Samar is now joining me. Samar, Jarrah, so many appointments happening, and that's what we're going to talk about today. How are you?
Assalamu alaikum, Ahmed. How are you? I am good, alhamdulillah, and good afternoon.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum means peace be upon you. Alhamdulillah means thanks and all praises to God. Why is it that Muslims, whenever you ask them how are you, they say Alhamdulillah?
Yeah, even if we don't feel good or if we are sick or not happy, it's just like a knee-jerk reaction to always thank God, alhamdulillah.
Is it knee-jerk? I don't know if it's knee-jerk. I think it's just the tradition.
No, like, you know how you say it without thinking?
Yeah, it's just programmed in that's our first response is alhamdulillah. Okay. It's rare that you, when you ask a Muslim, like in our culture, in our tradition, how are you? And they say, oh, things are horrible. And they start venting and complaining. God, they always start with like, oh, alhamdulillah. And then they say, well, then they may express some discomfort, but they don't, at least the person that is kind of more grounded. I'm not going to generalize and say that all Muslims respond in this way, but culturally speaking, and it's part of, even the Arabs who are not Muslim respond with alhamdulillah, like Christians in the Arab world. It's just part of the language. Yeah. They'll say alhamdulillah. Yeah. And people might be, especially if you're not familiar and maybe you get your information about Islam from Fox News, they often repeat that, all Muslims don't worship the same God. The God is Allah. In the Arab world, in the Middle East, where Christianity began, where Judaism and Islam all started, the name for God is Allah. So even Christian Arabs who are Christian, and they exist, there's many of them, in the birthplace of Jesus and surrounding region, they also say Allah. If you actually open the Bible, the Old Testament or the New Testament that's in Arabic, the name of God in the Bible is Allah. So it's not a different God. And it's always been annoying to me when, especially evangelical Christians or others that talk about the America being a Judeo-Christian nation. First of all, that's a recent phenomena where they're linking Judaism and Christianity because for many years, for centuries, they were at odds with each other. However, it's not just Judeo-Christian. Muslims and Islam is also part of that because those make up what's called the monotheistic faith that believe in one God, one creator, and following the religion and the path of Abraham, who was the father, is considered to be the father of the prophets and the three monotheistic religions. But of course, that's a side note. Our focus of the show is the foreign policy, global affairs that deals with the Muslim world, U.S. Muslim relations, the Middle East. In the past, for the past year, or since October 7th, 2023, our focus has been on the ongoing genocide in Gaza. And our show today is about that as well, but in the context of President-elect Trump returning to the White House, but this time with a different cabinet, different nominations, and how will these nominees impact the direction of our foreign policy? How will it differ from Trump's first term when he was president, when he won in 2016? So will it be better? Will it be worse? A lot of people are kind of freaked out by the nominations so far. What are you seeing? What reaction do you have about it, Samar? And what are you seeing that's, being said online?
Let me start with the ones that will be affecting, I think, what is going on in Gaza. But I think so many people are looking at, for instance, the names like Senator Marco Rubio of Florida. He's going to be Secretary of State. And, if you have followed him, and I think we have a few clips that we can use, he is adamant about wiping out Hamas, which is really undoable. Nobody is ever able to finish off a resistance movement or whatever you want to call it. But at the same time, he should be a Secretary of State who will bring people together, try to find a ceasefire, return the hostages. And then if you look at Representative Stefanik, of New York, she's going to be the ambassador of the United Nations, and we know how she acted during the hearings with the presidents of universities, because she thought that students should not be objecting to the genocide going on in Gaza that we pay for. Our tax money pays for it. Our weapons are involved in this war. And then you look at Mike Huckabee of Arkansas. And again, we do have some clips of him denying the fact that Palestinians have rights, considering the settlements to be neighborhoods, and he refuses to call them that. And according to international law and according to congressional law, these settlements are illegal, and they are founded on the confiscation of Palestinian land. They violate the Oslo Accords that the U.S. was a sponsor of. So Mike Huckabee is going to be the ambassador. How is he going to be even-handed? And then if you look at names like Stephen Witikoff, and I think if you look at Stephen Miller, what people are saying, not only in the Palestinian circles and Arab circles, but also in the liberal Jewish voters, saying this is almost handpicked by the government of Netanyahu, and right-wing aspect of the government in Israel. These are pro-settlement, pro-Netanyahu, pro the annexation of the whole of West Bank, the whole of Jerusalem, and probably and maybe even allowing Israel to expand its territory into Lebanon, into Syria, into Gaza, and maybe into Sinai. So this is, Ahmed, what is the mood? Not only in the Arab world is like, and I mean, some of these names they know, but some of these names they don't know. But in the circles of Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, and liberal Jewish Americans, they are really in shock, I would say.
Right.
I don't know
By the way, by the way, speaking of Marco Rubio, of course, if he he has accepted nomination, if he's confirmed, which seems even some Democrats are supporting his nomination. But those Democrats, by the way, are the, very pro-Zionist, pro-Israel Democrats that are supporting Marco Rubio nomination. If he does, then his seat, which is a Senate seat, would be vacant, and then it's up to Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, our governor, to appoint a replacement for his seat. Now, Marco Rubio won re-election in 2022, meaning he has a 6-year term, which would end in 2028. But I think the rules say the appointment by the governor would only be valid until 2026, where whoever is nominated would have to run again in a special election. So there wouldn't be a special election right away. It would be in 2026. And there's, people that are speculating. There's a couple of different options because people are speculating that DeSantis himself would want to take that seat because that's a powerful seat and there are no term limits, where governor, of course, it's a 2-term limit, and DeSantis his term also finishes in 2026. So one of the options that they're talking about, and I know this is a side note, but he would appoint his chief of staff, James, forgot how to pronounce his last name, Othmeyer or something like that, as kind of a caretaker, a placeholder until 2026, when then DeSantis would run for that seat. But there's also an option or a way that he himself would take the seat, the Senate seat, appoint himself to the Senate seat, and then he would allow someone else that he would handpick to somehow take over, which is Nunes. I think it would be the lieutenant governor, I believe, to take over. So there's a lot of things that, these are all calculations. Of course, if the problem is with Trump, if he appoints somebody like Marco Rubio to the seat, then they have a falling out. Then he fires Marco Rubio in a year or two. Then Marco Rubio is now out of the Senate and out of a job. So that's always a gamble with Trump because he's unpredictable. So all these people that are being nominated, it may be a honeymoon right now, but later on when there's some conflict, when they don't do what Trump wants, and which a lot of times is not traditional. And Marco Rubio is a hawk, and Trump has been saying that, he wants to stop endless wars, but Marco Rubio is actually the opposite. I don't think there's been a war that Marco Rubio is not, supporting. So he's more like a neocon. So I don't know if it's actually this honeymoon period is going to last. But like you said, it doesn't really spell
something positive
in the immediate future. Yeah, a lot of people are just keep saying like, OMG, oh my God, this is crazy, these appointments. And Stefanik is also another like wild, the one thing they share in common, of course, they're very pro-Israel, rhetoric and promises. And not to mention the Secretary of Defense, who is a Fox and Friends TV host. Yeah, sure, he served in the military, but he was not really in any management. And he seems to be like a evangelical, like kind of extreme right-wing Christian fanatic.
Ahmed, I posted on Twitter a photo of his chest. He has the Crusaders emblems.
The cross of the Crusaders.
No, not only that, but also I forgot the name of it because I posted it in Arabic. I'm going to try and find it now. So you're not talking about your average, pro-Israel or evangelical. I mean, this is a guy who believes in the Crusades and that the cross and these wars were legitimate. I'm trying now to go and find it. I'm not sure if these things would really be. Here, what does it say? Trying to read it. Balt. Okay, I can't. Oh my gosh! And he has a serpent.
Yeah, it's a Latin phrase that basically that meant that God supported or ordained the Crusades. That somehow that the violence. Now everybody knows that the Crusades caused a lot of violence,
which killed really tens of thousands of Christians and Jews.
Yeah, right. So it was really an anti-Semitic crusade.
And banned Jews from Jerusalem.
Correct. So this is the thing. Right now, there's this.
And he's very anti-women being in the military. But Ahmed. Like when some people in the Arab world, when they say, okay, this is a good thing. This means America will be doomed. He will bring down the empire. And we are witnessing the collapse of the USA. And I tell them, the US has been a republic for a while. They still have a constitution. They still have Bill of Rights, and there are still maybe half the population didn't vote for him. And this is the test of democracy. Like, will there be civil society, a true, powerful civil society? Where will there be institutions? This is where I am hopeful, and I'm not sure if our listeners are hopeful, because in the midst of all this gloom, this is the only thing that keeps me going, Ahmed, that we do have a civil society. And I remind them with the Muslim ban, because I was on a discussion on Twitter, and they told me, you're in danger, maybe you guys need to leave. And I said, when he imposed the Muslim ban, before the airplanes were arriving to the airports, the lawyers were in the airports, in the arrival areas, were their laptops open, with their hotspots open, and telling people, log freely, and we're going to take you out. And he eventually, all these people were able to be allowed into the US. And without this civil movement and this civil society, he could have gone far, much more further down. What do you think, Ahmed? I am hopeful, but I have to have this hope.
Okay, obviously, the civil society or institutions or activists and people that rush to the airports, they slowed things down, and they were able to halt some of these things and challenge them in court. Now, it's a different time, Now, when he takes office, it's much different environment than it was in 2026. The democratic institutions and these institutions are not as strong as they were before. And Trump and his team, the people he brought in, like Stephen Miller and others, Stephen Miller being the architect of the Muslim ban policy, and he was a senior advisor. Now he's been nominated or appointed as Deputy Chief of Staff on Policy. So he's going to be writing all these policies and executive orders on immigration and other matters related to security, etc. But they didn't have the experience. So now they've had the experience. Trump didn't really know what he was doing in Washington when he first entered, and it took him 4 years to learn. Now coming back, he knows it inside out. They have a plan. That's why they're going so fast. And I think the Democrats are sleeping at the wheel. I don't know if they're on vacation or what's happening, or they're just still trying, finger pointing who's to blame for what had happened. But if they don't get their act together, the policy, they're not going to know what hit them, because now it was just announced this morning that Republicans will retain the House. So they have all branches of government. They have the White House, the executive, they have Congress, both chambers, and they have the Supreme Court. Nothing is really can get in the way of stopping them. Of course, some of the things in the Senate will require 2/3 majority, supermajority, etc. However, like you said, there's going to have to be a very united front by all the opposition to be able to slow some of these things down, because some of the people that they're bringing in, they're planning on taking a sledgehammer to these institutions. And we'll talk more about, especially the Attorney General and the Department of Justice. They really are, he's bringing in people that will gut and go after the FBI. I think people there are very concerned, but the average person on the street, and especially people that voted for Trump, think and thought and continue to think that Washington is broken. It hasn't been working for them. So they don't really care if somebody goes in there and breaks everything up and disrupts it and destroys it. They want to start all over, or at least reform it in a big major way, because for decades now, they feel like the government is not serving their interests and it's serving the interest of a few people. Mm-hmm. And that's why they voted for Trump, many of them. But now Trump is bringing in, the billionaire class. So on one hand, so the things that he promised, when he says promises made, promises will be delivered, but then you're appointing, looking at Wall Street and, billionaires to come and fill some of these cabinet positions, especially when it comes to the economy and other things. Is that really going to help the working class? Or is that helping, the billionaires, or impose certain things? Now, Elon Musk, for example, is going to have a big role in this government. It's kind of it's not an official role. He's not part of the cabinet, but a little bit outside. They announced this Department of Government Efficiency, which its acronym, coincidentally, it's of course not a coincidence. Its acronym also matches the name of a crypto coin that Elon Musk himself is heavily invested in, Dogecoin, DOGE. And the department that Trump announced that they're establishing is called the Department of Government Efficiency, which also matches the same acronym as the Dogecoin. So that coin is basically like a different crypto coin, similar to Bitcoin, but a lot cheaper. Its price is rising, and it's being traded heavily because people are saying, well, Elon is bringing Dogecoin to the government. So there's, when you talk about conflict of interest that's going to be happening, there's going to be a lot of it. But where are the checks and balances? And it's not like we can't, in my opinion, we can't just let the Democrats off the hook here. Especially when I say Democrats, I mean the Democratic establishment. The Clintons and the Obamas and the Nancy Pelosi's and the senior leaders within the Democratic Party that have just, like Bernie Sanders said, in his opinion, that they abandoned the working class, so the working class abandoned them. They started just doing the bidding for the rich corporations, the big corporations and the billionaire class, and competing to be like Republicans in one sense. So there wasn't really much different. I mean, at the end, Kamala Harris was campaigning with Liz Cheney and praising Dick Cheney, her father, who was basically a war criminal, and refused to be seen on stage with Bernie Sanders because they thought that, Bernie Sanders would alienate voters. Well, guess what? No, you alienated your own base. She had a total of 69 million votes. That's way less than what Biden had, which was something like over 80 million votes. There were so many votes that she had lost. Trump stayed about around the same. I think he had 74 million, and I have to check the numbers, and he dropped maybe to 70 million. But especially in swing states, I mean, he won the popular vote. He won every single swing state. He won the Electoral College. It was a huge defeat. And if you've listened to the interview with Nancy Pelosi over the weekend, she says no. They didn't do anything wrong. The only thing is maybe Biden should have dropped off earlier.
I don't think, Ahmed, they're going to be re-evaluating their stand because they are part of the problem. They are part of the elite.
Then they'll become irrelevant. Then now that's basically like Ralph Nader said this week is it's basically the beginning of the end or the end of the Democratic Party. They're not going to be able to recover from this, and in all basically people did not just vote for Donald Trump. They voted for President Vance. Vance, if Trump has some health issues and has to leave or dies during this term, Vance is going to take over. And then Vance can run again and again. And so it's basically, and Vance is a young guy and he's likable and people like him. And they're going to get another appointment on the Supreme Court. So they're going to be here for a while, this Republican Party, which was, when Obama came to power, was on the verge of collapse. They were not winning the popular vote. They were hardly able to keep a coalition together. But now their coalition grew and the Democrats' coalition shrank. But Samar, I wanted to play for you some of the clips that you had selected for the nominees. So go ahead and say, maybe have a reaction to this, and then we'll play some of the things that the nominees that Trump had nominated to cabinet positions, what they said about Gaza and Palestine.
I just want to mention, Ahmed, not all people voted for Trump for one reason or two or three or four.
True.
Some people voted because they thought that he's going to make them pay less at the grocery store, okay? If he imposes his tariffs, that means there is a raise in every family household expenditure of about $2,600 annually. Some people voted for him because they want him to stop wars. Is he going to stop the Gaza war? Some people who voted for him don't necessarily like to give money to Israel. They don't see that this is justified. And you have people who are extremely anti-Israel who voted for him. So you have so many different people who voted for so many different reasons, and some of them are totally contradicting the other. So they could also find that he's not delivering. And this is what happened when they didn't vote for him and voted for Biden. So I don't think that they're going to be here for 8 years if something happens to him and Vance. I mean, it doesn't mean that they will deliver.
Right, but it's not about delivery. It's about what. It's sometimes also perception of what they think he is. Right, but
they think he can do.
Right. I mean, he's promised a lot. If things, of course, that don't improve in people's lives, like cost of living and their economy, it could change. But the Democrats have to talk about things. If the Democrats keep running on the same thing that they ran on for the past since 2016 and before and after, it's basically, we're better than Trump, vote for us because democracy is on the line. Trump is a fascist. That's not going to work. You actually have to talk about things that, what they call, kitchen table issues or bread and butter, things that impact everybody's lives, their daily lives, whether it's their, income or expenses or their taxes or their kids' education or healthcare. Not just keep repeating that Trump is a fascist and we have to save democracy. Well, if they can't afford to pay their rent in their communities or can't afford to go to the doctor, well, what do they care about democracy? Democracy is not working for them. They're trying to survive. And another thing is that basically the party has become, and I think even Bernie Sanders had said this before and others, that the party just became, that just regular, just talking about abortion and LGBTQ issues. And this is not to say this is right, but that can't be the only issue. Those things are wedge issues that don't impact the majority of Americans. So Trump, and I think they didn't realize how effective his ads were about the trans issues. if you look back over the past 4 years, how much has the trans issue consumed in the political life? And people have very strong feelings about this, but they made it in a way that you can't even like question it. That, people that, become trans and compete in sports, and that upset a lot of people, even some Democrats that went the other way, or, adding this to the school curriculum. So sure, you can be a big tent, but it can't be at the expense of everyday things and be out of touch. So people, they need to reevaluate what are the issues, what does it mean to be a Democrat? And I think they've lost their identity of what it means to be standing up for the working class, especially now. A lot of the working class did shift over to the Republicans because they felt the Democrats hasn't been able to do what they promised. But going back to this topic, and by the way, if you're just joining us, this is True Talk on WMNF. Samar and I, the hosts of this show, are talking about Trump's latest appointments and how their nominations and how they'll impact foreign policy, and especially about Gaza. Going down the list that you sent me, Marco Rubio is nominated for Secretary of State. And he accepted this position. So we have a clip, basically, Medea Benjamin from Code Pink found him in the halls, and this is what he had to say.
Contrary. Are you filming it? So I want you guys to get this. I want them to destroy every element of Hamas they can get their hands on. These people are vicious animals who did horrifying crimes, and I hope you guys post that.
And what about the civilians that are being killed every day?
Hamas should stop hiding behind civilians, putting civilians in the way. Hamas knew that this was going to lead to this, so Hamas should stop building their military installations underneath hospitals.
So you don't care that 15,000 have died? You don't care about the babies that are being killed every day?
I think it's terrible, and I think Hamas is 100% to blame. That's what I think. Make sure you post that, please.
So here we are outside the office of Senator Marco Rubio, who we ran into in the halls of Congress.
Samar?
Yes, Ahmed.
Oh, you heard what he said. What is this?
I didn't
You
hear
highlighted. This is Marco Rubio, and he said basically they're hiding behind civilians. Why did you clip this out?
I did hear it before, but I mean, when you were playing it, I could not hear it. Actually, there is a very recent interview with him, and he says it doesn't matter what I have said before. My job, if I am confirmed as Secretary of State, is to actually implement policy. Whatever the president says, whatever the White House policy is vis-a-vis the Arab-Israeli conflict or vis-a-vis Iran or China, I am merely someone who will implement the policy. So he's trying to backtrack what he was not only, of course, about Israel and Hamas, but of course about what he had said earlier about China and what he had said about Iran. And that's my hope, Ahmed, that there will be people at the State Department who will tell him that, there are treaties that we are involved in, or there are diplomatic steps. Not that we saw any of that being implemented when it came to Biden and the Biden administration, especially with all the violations of the red lines of the Biden administration when it comes to Gaza. So, I don't think he scares me as much as Stefanik.
Okay, well, I think let's play her.
Yeah, she's too extreme for me.
Okay.
You have a clip?
Yeah, I have a clip of her, and she's nominated for a U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. This would be basically the same position that, does those vetoes and is America's representative to the UN. And this is what she said when she visited Israel.
The American people, I will defend George Washington's vision of religious pluralism and freedom. Today, this means crushing anti-Semitism at home and supplying the state of Israel with what it needs, when it needs it, without conditions to achieve total victory in the face of evil. Chants of death to America are not hollow slogans. They are a promise that what happened here on October 7th could happen in the United States unless Hamas and its jihadist accomplices are eliminated. And it is the United States' high honor and high responsibility to support Israel's effort. I have been clear at home, and I will be clear here. There is no excuse for an American president to block aid to Israel, aid that was duly passed by the Congress. There is no excuse to ease sanctions on Iran, paying a $6 billion ransom to the world's leading state sponsor of terror, or to dither and hide while our friends fight for their lives. No excuse, full stop. That's why I'm proud to have sponsored or backed every measure to aid Israel that has come before the United States Congress. Every single one. And it's why for years I have been a leading proponent and partner to President Trump in his historic support for Israeli independence and security, including moving the U.S. Embassy to its rightful place in Jerusalem. Israel is indeed a miracle, an outpost of freedom, of Western values, of civilization, a striking example of human potential, the physical embodiment of Herzl's maxim, if you will it, it is no dream. It's the same founding ethos that we prize in America, the American dream.
Samar.
If you're just joining us, this is True Talk on WMNF 88.5 FM. My co-host Ahmed Bedier and I, Samar Jarrah, are discussing the new suggested nominations of President-elect Trump. When she says crushing anti-Semitism with the conflated definition of anti-Semitism, which literally means if I talk about Palestine or I support Palestinian rights and causes, I might be labeled as anti-Semitic. And I am sure, Ahmed, that you know that there is a bill that is trying to be passed in the House where I can't remember, I think it's H.R. 9495, which proposes a law that takes away the nonprofit designation of some organizations, and I feel that this might be threatening civil society and threatening organizations that are pro-Palestine or Islamic organizations. So these people are vicious. They do not want any voice that is supportive of the just cause of the Palestinians. So she's going to be the ambassador to the UN. And like you said, she's going to be vetoing and trying to stop any international effort to bring peace and justice to the Palestinians.
Right. Well, speaking of that bill that you mentioned, that's where you were speaking about Elise Stefanik. She is a member of Congress who Trump just nominated to be UN ambassador to the UN on behalf of the Trump administration. Very, very pro-Israel. She led that campaign to go after the university professors. I don't know if she's ideologically a Zionist or just using that to further her white supremacy kind of agenda. But I think it's full of contradictions when she says we want to fulfill George Washington. I don't think George Washington's dream, one of the founders of the United States, was to support Israel. Did not exist. How is she even making that connection? And to just give whatever military weapons aid that Israel needs anytime and not somehow stop it or threaten to use it. I mean, what's the point? Why not use your weapons as leverage to push your agenda? And it's just crazy that, somebody like that would be in such a high-profile position.
I think maybe you should play the other... Yeah, oh my God, this is... let me just, Ahmed, preface by saying where this guy, Mike Huckabee, is standing.
Where?
He's standing in Maali Adum. It's a settlement. It's an illegal small, let's say, condominium built on stolen land. Like they came kicked all the people who lived on a certain piece of, let's say, in real estate in Tampa, and then destroyed their homes, their land, their agriculture posts, their water wells, everything, and built a concrete condominium and have roads that takes only Jews to them, and a military to protect them. And he's standing there, so he's standing on stolen land, and according to international law, an illegal entity and place.
Okay, this is Mike Huckabee, former governor of Arkansas. His daughter, by the way, was the spokesperson or press secretary for Trump in the first term, and now she is the governor of Arkansas. The Huckabee family, he is what's considered a Christian Zionist, evangelical Christian Zionist, and sometimes they are even more Zionist than Israeli Zionist. Here's this clip, and this is from 2017.
And I'm speaking only as a person. I think Israel would only be acting on the property it already owns. I think Israel has title deed to Judea and Samaria. There are certain words I refuse to use. There is no such thing as a West Bank. It's Judea and Samaria. There's no such thing as a settlement. They're communities, they're neighborhoods, they're cities. There's no such thing as an occupation.
That they get out of their minds that people are living in lean-tos and tents, and sleeping in cars, circled around a tree. They're living in very well-designed and beautiful cities and communities. Can't wait to get back. I'm going to take an extra hat. I'm going to get it to President-elect Trump. Build Israel great again. Who knows? We may see him wear this out there in one of his rallies somewhere. I don't know. Can't promise that. I can only promise he will get a copy of the hat. Thank you very much.
Actually, Ahmed, there is a recent, I think, clip of him where he says, hey, guys, open the Bible. And when you open the Bible, you will realize that God, I think it was him, gave it to Abraham, forgetting that we are the descendants also of Abraham.
Right.
Abraham, nine sons, not only Ishmael and what was the Ishmael?
And Isaac.
And Isaac.
Well, Isaac is the one that the descendants of the tribes of Israel came from, and Muhammad came from Ishmael. In Arabic, it's Ismail. And this was Mike Huckabee in January, so people are not confused. This is not right now. This is Mike Huckabee, January 3rd, 2017, just a few days before Trump takes office. And he was at some groundbreaking in the occupied territories, which is Palestinian land. And he himself, just let me just finish this point. Yeah. He himself highlights something that many of these evangelical Zionists say, is that there's no such thing as West Bank. There's no such thing as Palestine. They refuse to use those words because they're completely trying to erase them completely. They don't acknowledge there's something called Palestinians. They think and say and believe Palestine never existed. There's no such thing as the Palestinian people. And that whole area is all Israel. And Judea, Samaria is, belongs to Israel. And they're reinterpreting biblical text that's like, 3,000-4,000 years old, of course, taking it out of context. Because as you mentioned, even if they go by the covenant that God made with Abraham according to the Bible, that Israel did not exist and the children of Israel did not exist. It was a covenant with Abraham and his children. And his children included the Arabs that came from Ishmael, as well as the Israeli tribes or the Jewish tribes that came from Isaac. So technically, it would actually belong to both people, not just one group. And of course, not the Ashkenazi Jews that came from Europe. They're not even part of the equation because they're not descendants of Abraham.
But this is very scary, Ahmed, that if he again becomes the ambassador, because the fact that he denies the existence of the West Bank and these settlements, this reminds me of the far right minister in the Netanyahu cabinet, Smotrich, just past Monday. He said the election of Trump means that in 2025, it would be the year that Israel begins to annex the West Bank. And for our listeners, the West Bank is where the state, the Palestinian state, the two-state solution that we have been promoting, I mean the U.S. government since the Oslo Accords, promoting in the peace process that never, ends, that some areas in the West Bank will be part of the Palestinian state. So when you have an ambassador that believes that the West Bank doesn't exist, that whole terminology does not exist, it means that there could be really an event that could happen where Israel would start annexing the West Bank, which is illegal, again, under international law. And you have an ambassador and an administration that believe, why not?
Well, do you think, since 1967, Israel has occupied all of that land. They basically, even though there's something called the West Bank and there's something called Gaza, the reality is they actually control all the land there, now including the Golan Heights and others. There is, since Oslo, this agreement that happened in the 90s, a kind of a de facto sub-government that works under the Israelis called the Palestinian Authority, and they're supposed to represent the Palestinian community, but it's not really a state. They're just kind of like caretakers of the Palestinians, but they have to report and they're, to the Israeli government. By annexing and taking over the West Bank completely and getting rid of the Palestinian Authority, that means really the two-state solution is officially over, and there's only one state. And now Israel, all those people that live there, both the Arabs and the Jews, the Palestinians and the Jewish people, are all under the same government, which will be a very clear form of apartheid because there's two different rules. I mean, do you think that in the long run that would actually work towards equal rights for both people, because it will be so obvious that there's one set of rules for the Jewish people and a completely different set of rules that are, mistreating the Palestinians?
Actually, Ahmed, I have to agree with you. I absolutely believe that, like you said, the what is going on there is that, unfortunately, the Palestinian Authority and Mahmoud Abbas are just policing the Palestinians and suffocating them more, and doing the job that an occupier should do, because they are under occupation. The occupation under international law have to offer education, food, shelter, blah, blah. But it is how they will do this annexation, Ahmed, because again, you have natural resources, you have agricultural land, you have wells, you have water sources, you have olive trees. And these fanatics like Smotrich, these people, they don't mind killing people. They don't mind destroying villages. They don't mind uprooting trees. I mean, they're so extreme in their thinking. They don't think Palestinians are human. They're not even subhuman, if you read what they say and how they are acting in Gaza. So eventually in 10 or 15 years, the whole world will realize that this is an apartheid system, and there will be equal rights for the Palestinians and the Jews who live there. But at what price?
Right.
What price? That's what is scary.
I think it's going to be bad in the near future. And I think especially in the next couple of months between now and the inauguration, I think the Israeli, Netanyahu government, which just basically, he fired his defense minister because, he was slowing him down. He was saying there's nothing left to do in Gaza. All military options and things have already been completed. There's nothing left, and Netanyahu doesn't want to stop the war there because it would mean that he would face political consequences. But I think in the immediate, during this transition period where, Biden is not willing to do anything and Trump is just putting his cabinet together, they're going to do a lot of horrible and horrific things. And during the holiday season, to try to change as much of the facts on the ground, grab as much land as possible, do more ethnic cleansing, unfortunately, and especially in North Gaza, to grab more of that land for themselves. This is all about just getting more of that land so they can change the realities. So when Trump comes in office, that there'll be a completely different set of realities that Trump has to deal with. But I think they'll try to show that Trump is a peacemaker by stopping the violence before his inauguration. But there'll be a lot of damage done before then. Of course, it doesn't mean the occupation is going to be over. There'll be other less obvious attacks. But Samar, we got an email from Jeff Smith who says, amazing show today. Thanks so much for this great topic. Yes, I would agree that Trump's cabinet picks seem like dangerous idiots. I would completely agree with Ahmed that Stefanik is simply claiming her Zionist tendencies in order to further her political career. She's from Polish Czech father and an Italian mother. They're not Jewish. She's simply a liar and a political climber and a mean-spirited person. Huckabee is an out-and-out danger. He's the only state governor whose previous job was a TV evangelist. His corruption is very, very complete. We really appreciate your show. Please keep up the good work. So thanks for that email, Jeff. I think, people are not stupid and they see through these things. It's unfortunate, though, how things could have been so much different had the Democrats and had Biden and had, of course we can't just, there's no going back. But I feel like the Democrats, and it's not just what happened this election. I mean, this happened in 2016 and they never really had a reckoning because the same issues that were on the table in 2024 were the same things from 2016. I think Biden won in 2020 because of the pandemic and people were just freaked out what was happening and it was a reaction to that. But the issues that people had a problem with in 2016 were still the same issues in 2024. People were against the establishment. They're against the government and the government has been working for them and they want change and they feel like Trump was the only vehicle to do that. Summer, there's another email from Brian who says, from Tampa to Summer, True Talk Dummy Off. I have no argument against the points you made on your show today. However, in my opinion, the problems and justice you mentioned will not stop until persons in general realize that all three Abrahamic religions are non-fiction political tools contrary to the golden rule. We get this from time to time, people that are against religion. Betty says, it's the saddest thing to see Palestinians totally lose their homes, land, and rights. Huckabee is a disaster. As a Jewish woman, I'm outraged at Israel's right-wing government and settlers. And I'm glad Betty sent that message because oftentimes when people hear us, they think somehow we have a problem with the Jewish people. This is not about Jewish people, right, Samar? This is about the Israel occupation of Palestinians and the genocide that's going on. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Of course, Ahmed. Both you and I are Semites, so we speak Arabic, we're Semitic, we can't be anti ourselves. This has nothing to do with religion. It's about justice. And do you have people on the line, phone calls?
We that call dropped, but the reason why I ask you that question is because sometimes people haven't listened to our show and they hear this and they think somehow we're just bashing Jewish people or Judaism. And I've seen this, and we saw, we didn't talk about this, but you saw what happened with this football match in Amsterdam, was it? Or was it? Yeah. And then the media was all depicting it that Israelis were attacked by, mobs in Amsterdam after, Jewish people were attacked because they're Jewish. And it's anti-Semitic, and the Israeli government said they're going to send warplanes to go and rescue people, when in reality it was the Israeli fans of this football team that came in and caused havoc. And many people kept repeating, it has nothing to do with your religion. It's your behavior, how you behaved in Amsterdam, and that's why people reacted the way they did. Because, they were chanting things like there are no schools left in Gaza because there are no children left in Gaza. And they were provoking the local local residents of Amsterdam.
Burning the Palestinian flag and saying, F you Arabs.
Right. And then when people reacted and fought back and beat them up, then they say, oh, it's anti-Semitism. Samar, we're out of time. The scoop is next. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe, everyone. True Talk, WMNF Tampa.